You want to dive into macronutrients?
Let's do it.
Let's start with protein. So remember we used to, not we, because we never had this conversation, but remember in the industry, it was like protein timing and when is the best time to bolus dose protein and should we have a lot of slow digesting protein before bed and things like that. Over the past decade, research has shown us that consistent protein dosages throughout the day is probably best. So it's probably not good to not have protein for the first 8 hours of your day and just like bolus dose 200 grams of protein in that last meal. Probably not the best thing to do. So protein's actually really easy. Understand what your protein requirements are. So very simple. It's like, are we looking at 1 gram per pound of body weight, or are we looking at 1 to 1.3 to 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass, whatever that thing is. If you're a heavier individual, I would go with the latter. But they end up being about the same if you're a fairly lean individual. So identify your protein requirements and just split those things up. If you eat 3 meals a day, split that protein number into 3. But we have to be honest, that protein number is going to be difficult to hit with someone that's eating 2 to 3 meals a day if that protein number is like 150 to 200 grams of protein. So you just have to strategize how you're dosing protein throughout your day. And that's where the idea of like the 5 to 7 meals a day came from, because it was like that constant hit of protein synthesis throughout the day. So thinking about how you break your protein up is the starting point. I would always just recommend eat 3, 4 meals a day. Maybe some people go to 5 because they have a couple snacks. Just split those evenly up through that. And if you're doing that, you're fine because you're dosing appropriately throughout the day. And let's call it 20 to 30 grams of protein is enough for most people to start to elicit that protein synthesis process. And 30 to 40 grams is probably not any better than 20 to 30 for most people. So that's where I think the principle of like disperse evenly is an easy one for people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and gosh, even where you do run into like conversations and best practices around like protein connected to training and having it like in that anabolic window, whether or not that is true. And it's definitely, researchers kind of disprove the idea that you got to eat your protein within 60 minutes, so long as you are getting that adequate amount throughout meals during the day. But if you are breaking up your meals 3 to 4, 3 to 5 times throughout the day, chances are those are going to fall within a couple hours, 1 to 2 hours of training anyway, and you are going to be getting protein in just by the nature of the fact that you've decided to split it up throughout your meals close to training. So you're kind of covering your bases there anyway.
Yeah, it's important. We talked about anabolism and catabolism. It's important for, let's say you have someone that trains. I wouldn't recommend this, but say you have someone that trains at 7 o'clock and they get home at 8:30 and they have some water and go to bed. For that person, sorry, I'm like jumping into the pre-post, but for that person, it might be important to have some protein post aerobic training at 8:30 at night, right? Because is it a big deal if someone goes to sleep and their goal is like, I should preface it with that, their goal is to not lose muscle. Is it a big deal for them to do that once or twice a month? No, it's really not. But just imagine that same person doing 3 aerobic training sessions per week, every day, or sorry, every week, every month, and the compounding effect of that atrophy occurring through the catabolism that they're putting their bodies through for 9, 10 hours. 3 times a week. So it would be important for that person just because they're doing it consistently and constantly. I don't think it has to be something like, you do that once every blue moon and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out in bed because I'm just losing so much muscle. That's definitely not the case. But if you do something over and over and over again, it's going to eventually compound and you're going to start to see those negative effects, if those are negative effects to you, if you're not trying to lose muscle mass.
Yeah, definitely. We can get more into the strategy around pre and post a little later in the conversation. But before we wrap up protein, one last thing, and this is doing a little bit of backtracking that I wanted to ask is, what are the reasons to eat protein? Because that does come into play when we're thinking about our pre and post workout nutrition. There's got to be a reason that we're putting this macronutrient in our body connected to what we just did. So for protein, what is that reason?
Yeah, I mean, relative to exercise, it's the building block of amino acids, right? It's like we need protein to stave off atrophy of muscle tissue or losing muscle tissue. Or if we're on the other side and we're like, I really want to gain muscle tissue, protein's really important. It's important to just be there, though, right? It's important to be there consistently. And I know you hit that with like if you eat it every few hours, you're probably just fine. And that's what I would say. It's like if you're getting enough protein consistently throughout your day, timing is actually not that important.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, muscle building.
We
Gotta
like
build it.
building the muscles.
Gotta build the muscle, or just
Yeah.
keep it. Let's at least keep our muscle. That's
Definitely.
important, right?
Definitely.